Welcome to confidence interval for the mean when your population standard deviation is unknown. I'm going to try to go ahead and start off with where we left off in statistics, where we just finished confidence intervals where you did with the z-score. So when you have a z-score, that means you have to know what your population mean is. So in these problems, you are not going to know your population mean. You're going to know your sample mean. So when you do that, you have to find what we call a t-score instead of a z-score. It's very similar. You're going to find that table on page 781, so right after your z-score table. So what is a t-score? So a t-score distribution is very similar to your normal distribution, so that it's symmetric like your normal distribution, and it has the mean, median, and mode at the center. How is it different? Well, when we talk about the variance, your variance is greater than 1. It is based on a family of curves and on the degrees of freedom. And as your sample size increases, it looks more like the normal curve. So we have a picture of it in your book right here, where we have your z-score is this normal curve, and then your t-score it shows with degrees of freedom, which is close to your sample size, of 20, and degrees of freedom for 5. So you see with a smaller sample size, it is lower than your normal curve. So what is degrees of freedom? So degrees of freedom is you're going to take your sample size and you're going to subtract 1 from it. And that's your degrees of freedom. What that is going to do is that's going to have to do with your table in the back of the book. So hopefully you can see this or follow along with the back of the book. We have our degrees of freedom on this column over here, and then we have across the top your confidence intervals. So I'm going to have a couple of problems that help you read this table, and that's all we're going to do today. So before we had our z of alpha over 2, so today we're going to do a t of alpha over 2. It's basically the same thing. It's just now we only have a sample mean instead of a population mean. So we're going to look up that t-score for your 95% confidence interval with a sample size of 22. So with a sample size of 22, we're going to start with our degrees of freedom. Have now got to be 21 because we subtract 1 from that sample size. So we're going to go over here, and we want a 95% confidence interval. So we're going to follow along on the table. Our degrees of freedom of 21, I believe it looks like it's right here, and then we're going to go over to the 95% confidence interval. So we're looking across the top. I believe this is the 95% confidence interval at the 21, and then we have the number 2.080 is what that's supposed to say. So our answer then is the 2.080. That is our t-score. So then we're just going to go ahead and try another one, and again, that's all the lesson is for today. So we want to find t of alpha over 2 for a 98% confidence interval with a sample size of 25. So again, we need to start with our degrees of freedom. We subtract 1 from the sample size, which would give us 24. We're going to go on over to the table. It was a 98% confidence interval, which would be here. And then we want to go down to the 24, which it looks like is right here, and over to the 98, and that's supposed to be 2.492. So then our answer would be 2.492. Now this will get you started.